All right, Trey Yanks, thank you very much from the front lines there. And President Trump is working to defend one of the world's most important oil shipping lanes from attacks. Iran's regime is targeting ships in the Strait of Hormuz. These images show the aftermath of a strike on a cargo vessel there that burst into flames. The Revolutionary Guard claims to have struck 2 vessels in the strait. CENTCOM released this dramatic new video. It shows U.S. forces striking and sinking several of what it says are Iran's mine-laying ships, trying to plant bombs in that important waterway. The president, with this very strong warning for Iran's regime, he posted this, quote, "We want them removed immediately. If for any reason mines were placed and they are not removed forthwith, the military consequences to Iran will be at a level never seen before." Now, here's a former top White House national security official on that.
The president showing he is not going to tolerate the Iranians holding international maritime traffic hostage as part of this cat and mouse game they're playing.
Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin's tracking all of this, and she's got more. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Shannon. Well, President Trump can order the military to open the Strait of Hormuz, but it may not be that easy. It is a slow and tedious process to demine the strait if the IRGC Navy continues to lay mines, and they have thousands of drones that can threaten ships, as well as some submarines that can hide at the bottom of the seabed near the 2-mile opening. This is what the U.S. military expected to happen in the strait if the Iranian regime felt it was facing an existential threat. Iran has claimed responsibility for firing projectiles at 2 container ships. A third was seen on fire today at the mouth of the strait. Its crew had to abandon the ship. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs said that he and the other military leaders at the Pentagon are studying the feasibility of sending naval escorts for commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. But this is easier said than done because the Iranians can literally drop a few mines at a time off the back of small dhow boats, and any U.S. destroyer that would escort an oil tanker is a large target for the Iranian Shahed drones.
We'll look at the range of options to set the military conditions to be able to do that. And then, like we always do with every potential mission, come to the Secretary and the President with both what are the resources required, what is the command and control required, and what are the risks, and how do we mitigate those risks.
In other words, it's not happening yet. Yesterday, we learned that Iran had placed about a dozen mines in the strait. Last night, CENTCOM announced it had blown up 16 Iranian mine-laying boats. But the Iranians have more, and those 50 naval warships that CENTCOM has sunk were part of Iran's Blue Navy, not the IRGC Navy small fast boats which can threaten the strait.
If we start to bring our warships through right now, the Iranians still have the capability, not just at the coastal area, which we can eliminate, but hundreds of miles back. We're likely not going to begin that task of escorting tankers through until that threat is removed.
7 vessels carrying 11.7 million barrels of Iranian crude oil have crossed the Strait of Hormuz between February 28th and March 9th. All were heading to China, we're told. So Iran is still managing to get some of its oil tankers through the strait. Shannon.
Yeah, a great point. All right, Jen Griffin, thank you very much. So Victoria Coates joins us now, Deputy National Security Advisor during President Trump's first term, also Vice President of the National Security, part of the Heritage Foundation. Victoria, good to see you.
Great to see you.
Let's pick up where Jen left off, this issue of China, because they need that oil too.
They do, and this has been very interesting. Iran has sort of had a selective closure of the strait, and the ships that are going to China are still getting out. I also wonder if this means they're not serious about mining the strait, because bear in mind, that does a ton of damage to Iran as well. They have to keep getting money into the country. I'm watching their banks very closely. They shut them down. There could be a run on the banks when they have to open them up again. So they have these bad financial problems. They can't really afford to stop running oil through the strait. So I'm curious to see what China says. I think this will be a very big part of the president's message when he meets with Chairman Xi at the end of the month.
Yeah, that's got to be on the top of the list. There are many subjects they're going to get through. So let's talk about the strait there. What physically can we do? I mean, is this a situation where, there's been talk of Karg Island, which is there off of Iran? that might be a place we'd actually have, quote, boots on the ground there. What about ships in the region? I mean, what kind of risk are there to U.S. personnel if we decide we have to get more actively involved in that strait?
That always has to be top of mind. And Karg Island is actually the export facility for the Iranians. And so that has always been on the target list. It's a very strategic location. And so that's something we can watch very closely. But at the same time, what we're seeing is a degradation of the sophistication of the tools that the Iranians are using. First, it was ballistic missiles. Those are now running out. Then it was the attack drones. Those are running out in turn. And as Jen was just reporting, these are not complicated exercises here. They're Dow boats. They're small boats. Mines are not sophisticated. So they're running out of tricks in their toolkit. And so I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing. We'll target those ships. We'll keep an eye on the mining situation very, very closely. But I think by any conceivable metric, the United States is really making great progress here.
Okay, I want to quickly ask you about ongoing concerns about their nuclear program. The Wall Street Journal editorial board says the job is not finished yet. They say this: the war is ahead of schedule in degrading Iran's military, but the nuclear program appears to have faced only a few Israeli surgical strikes, according to a non-proliferation expert. Those who want to limit U.S. objectives in Iran should be the most vociferous about the need to strike or secure Iran's top remaining nuclear sites.
Oh, absolutely. And bear in mind, the Iranians told Steve Witkoff at one of their meetings they have more than 800 pounds of 60% enriched uranium. And folks will say, oh, it's not 90%. That's just one turn of the dial to get to 90. So essentially, they're there. And that material has to be secured. And there's sort of some wild speculation that Delta Force or something will go in and take care of that. That's not what they do. What we actually have are these incredible teams of nuclear scientists who are also trained as soldiers, and they're small teams. This is not a force of thousands. It's a force of maybe a dozen who can come in and have the expertise to secure that material and get it out of the country. So at that point, we then can attend to the physical sites so that they can't go back into that enrichment business.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Apparently one of the end goals. Victoria, always appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.